good morning, people, wherever you may be. I happen to be in San Francisco, where it is extremely foggy, which is normal for this time of year. And that may be about the only normal thing that's going on at this point in our planet even, but all around. And so I want to welcome everybody who's joining in here. I am Steve Heilig. I'm a New School host and longtime Commonweal staff member and associate. And I am not Michael Lerner, who's mostly been doing these Friday morning talks. He is actually, it's not a secret, he's having surgery today. And it's literally about 10 blocks to my right here where he is. So we're all thinking very much of him. We're all confident that he will be fine. And we're going to continue on with the talks and the work that we do here, of course, with his blessing. Some of us have been in touch with him daily. And we very much welcome all of your own support for him in any way that you feel appropriate. And I believe we'll maybe have a little more on that. So today we are very glad to welcome one of our own here, Dr. Anna O'Malley, who is a respected and beloved physician in West Marin and who trained here in San Francisco area as well, and who has really taken the concepts of ecological medicine, integrative health into a very practical and useful way in our community, and who has talked and written about this as well, and was very graciously agreed to join us this morning when we canceled some of the other talks as well. So we're very fortunate, and good morning, Anna.
Good morning. Delighted to be here.
Thank you. So before we get into some of the history of who you are and what you do, I'm wondering if you might like to read the Manifesto for Healers that you recently wrote, which I think really encapsulate the ideas and the work that you do, and would us off in a great way with things to talk about. You want to do that to start?
Absolutely. Yeah. And just by way of background, in addition to being a primary care physician, which is a great honor and joy out here in West Marin, I also steward the Commonweal Garden and direct a program of Commonweal, the Natura Institute for Ecology and Medicine. And as I was coming into this incredible, another honor of a position 2 years ago, I wrote this as a way of sort of crystallizing and synthesizing things that have been on my heart and in my mind as really all along through coming into medicine and training in it and seeing the wounding therein and grappling with the challenges and the responsibility and the great gift of an opportunity that it is to be in medicine, and to help create or to attune myself really to that North Star of what it is that I want to be working with as a healer at this planetary moment. So here it is, a healer's manifesto. We are in need of deep healing on an individual, community, and planetary level. We are sickened by a focus on material consumption, which has distracted us from meaningful, health-enhancing relationships and sense of purpose, while adversely impacting life-sustaining ecosystems for future generations. In a globalized, connected world, we are socially isolated and lonely, disconnected from life-supporting nature, social connections, and weakened skills for healthy dialogue and connection. We are struggling with shocking disparities in wealth and access to essential needs of food, shelter, and healthcare. We are significantly stressed, distracted, and over-medicated, and have lost sight of what gives us our well-being and humanness on a living planet. Joy, sorrow, grief, awe, agency, community, connection, relationship, and the mystery of life and death itself. At a time when the voice of the healer is urgently needed, as healers working within the healthcare system, we are stressed, exhausted, overworked, and struggling to medically manage the far downstream effects of living in a culture that fuels the chronic disease epidemic. We are struggling to stay well while practicing in a system that asks more of us in less time, when health and healing requires relationship, thus more time. We recognize the very real risk we run of harming people when hurriedly addressing symptoms within complex systems and the exquisite uniqueness of human beings. We are demoralized by a system which emphasizes disease and pharmaceutical medicine rather than healing the wholeness of mind, body, spirit, and emotion. We recognize the harm caused by remaining complicit within a system that commodifies the management of chronic disease without addressing the underlying causes of unwellness in our patients and our communities. We are distressed by healthcare's significant ecological footprint and resulting negative impact on health and well-being. At a time when our precious life-sustaining planet is in peril and our species may well face extinction, it is time for healers to speak the truth to those in power, to partner with community, to advocate for healing on a personal, societal, and planetary level, and to offer our wisdom and knowledge to support the co-creation of new models of health and care delivery. It's time to build a movement within health and medicine that articulates and advocates for an ecology of healing within healthcare and communities, and for a medicine that is ecologically regenerative and restorative. We believe that our health systems should support conditions of health and wellness in which patients are heard and partnered with, clinicians are given time to listen to the patient's story, to thoughtfully consider the diagnosis, and to effectively educate and partner with patients on caring for themselves. We understand that health is dynamic as a function of mind, body, spirit, and emotion, and our beings have an inherent capacity to heal. Healers seek first and foremost to guide the patient back into balance with foundational, natural, least invasive approaches and procedures, and draw upon the medicine of social connection, the relaxation response, the nature connection, of meaning and wonder, and of nourishing food and healing plants. We believe that healers must partner with communities to reclaim agency over their healing and limit their encounters with a system not designed to give what is theirs to create for themselves, individually and collectively, their health and well-being. We believe in leveraging community as medicine, weaving interpersonal connections that can be harnessed in support of behavior change and in service of increasing resilience in individuals and communities. We believe that connecting people to nature is an essential aspect of healing for humans and for the earth. Awe and wonder, connection with something greater than ourselves, and cultivation of kinship with all forms of life are natural effects of being connected to nature. Remembering we are woven into a local ecosystem can serve as motivation to bring ourselves into a healthy balance with all life. We believe that it is time for the healer's voice, unfettered by healthcare system or corporate constraints, to be heard on issues of social justice, cultural and societal well-being, climate change, and the policy decisions that impact these decisions and issues. We believe that medicine should not harm people or the planet. We've caused harm to people who, in their vulnerable need for medical counsel, have been rushed, had their intuitions or research efforts dismissed or invalidated, or have not been listened to. We believe there are many healers and that physician healers do not have sufficient wisdom alone. We believe we must put into right relationship our focus on life and end of life and embrace the cycle of life and death as part of our healing journey. We believe that a new model of medicine is emerging as a best practice within medicine, a medicine that is empowering and ecological, that takes a whole systems approach, and that supports the well-being of the patient, the healer, the community, and the planet.
So, yes, you packed a lot in there. That's why it's called a manifesto, I think. Right? I mean, it's beautiful. Mm-hmm. So thank you for that. We'll get into a lot of those issues here. But let's go back first and start just about you. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born in Minnesota, and I grew up there until about 12, and then I moved to Wisconsin. And my childhood, I would say one of my first loves and quite the formative aspect of my childhood was the fact that we had a woods nearby, and I had quite a contemplative, I'm an introvert by nature, and spent a lot of time alone in the woods, just in, totally in fascination and wonder and connection, and in the fort building and the imaginative landscape and connection with the bunnies and the deer and the trees. And so for me, that was, absolutely a part of my childhood. And the other aspect of my childhood that was formative and that I've had an evolving, complex relationship with was being brought up in the church, in the Lutheran church. My parents are, I would say they're quite religious, and I would identify more as spiritual, which they would identify as a particularly California thing to say. But for me, the being brought up with a solid grounding in the teachings of Jesus Christ was really meaningful to me, and has, I think, informed a choice to go into the path of service and seeing the healing power of, and then moved to Wisconsin when I was 12, and many things. I mean, I love the Great Lakes ecology, the upper Midwest, the people, the humility and the kindness are the light sides of it. And, I was ready to go when recognizing the limitations, the lack of diversity, the lack of I think, openness to leading edge ways of thinking and integration of new ideas. And so particularly of the spiritual sort. And also being fascinated as a teenager, really loving music and the intersection of music and cultural change and cultural movements, and just feeling completely fascinated by the West Coast, and deeply in love with the lyrics of and the music of the Grateful Dead. And so when I went into medical school, which I did in Wisconsin, the Medical College of Wisconsin, when I was looking for residencies and making the decisions about where to go, I actually ranked only one program, which was, as you can appreciate, a gutsy thing to do. But that was the UCSF Family and Community Medicine residency program at the General Hospital, and came out and actually, did some away rotations in medical school to check it out at the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic, their drug outpatient clinic, and went up to Santa Rosa and checked out their program. But, just absolutely fell in love with San Francisco and the leading edge thinking and doing and being that was happening out here. And here I am.
You didn't say, where did you go undergraduate school?
Thank you. University of Wisconsin in Madison.
And was it during those years, undergraduate years, that you decided on medicine, or were you already thinking along those lines?
7th grade, really. My initial decision was born of a total fascination with learning about physiology and anatomy. As I said, I was completely enthralled with the natural world, and I love school, and was a really dedicated, studious, little driven achiever, self-motivated, Enneagram 1, firstborn, Capricorn, sort of a little girl. And in 7th grade, I had a wonderful biology teacher, and who actually was quite a rigorous teacher, but I was well met there, and just fascinated with the idea that I could choose a profession and a path that would offer me and even, of course, demand of me lifelong learning, and getting to learn fascinating, wondrous things about the human body. And that was, of course, just augmented and underscored as I continued that path. And of course, it wasn't until I was older and got to learn more and experience more and grow in the wisdom of what it is to engage with humanity and work within the context of relationships, and see that the science of it is only one beautiful facet of the practice of medicine. art of it, and the relationship weaving, and the societal role, and the opportunity for being a change agent, hence the manifesto, to sharpen that edge of like, what does this beautiful profession offer us to those who choose to step into it in a big, full way. So, but it started in 7th grade.
It's interesting because Rachel Naomi Remen, one of our stars as well, who went through medical training much before you did, but has spoken about a formative experience or experiences around that age. By the time you are an adolescent, 12 years old or something, that usually there's something that keys you off. It sounds like yours was cumulative of being out in the forest and you knew from an early age. The program that you mentioned at UCSF, the Family and Community Medicine one, is famous for taking a broader view of clinical training, as it were, the community as a ecosystem itself, and being open-minded about all of the impacts there. So it does sound like you landed in the right place, certainly there. What were the biggest challenges there? Even within medical training at UCSF, historically, there's been resistance to what we call complementary and integrative medicines, for example. And you were there during turmoil times of HIV exploding, and San Francisco General, for those who don't know, hospital is our public hospital, which is right in the center of all of the, you could say, cultural pathologies that we have of substance abuse and homelessness. So you were really thrown into a very different environment from the forests of Minnesota, I would say. And so what were your biggest challenges in medical training that you came up with? I don't think, UCSF has been very good about bringing women in, for one thing. So that's been for quite some time. There are lots of, actually, it's a majority now for quite some years, more than men. Great for some time. But, what did you struggle with mostly then?
Well, so I was there between 2005 and 2008. And I, between the forests of Minnesota and the pastoral beauty of Wisconsin and medical school, I did, as I mentioned, have this I was drawn to what it is to be at large music events and festivals and concerts, and did a lot of, I worked with rock medicine when I was out here, but also did a lot at, on the jam band scene. It was one of my, I'm a lover of ecstatic states. I'll say that too. Like, I think that there's something about being in an ecstatic state, be it through dance or through music or through collective consciousness, that is really resonant and I think speaks to something about what it is to be a healer and to be in the liminal realm. But many people find their way there through use of drugs. And so I had been really opened by my presence at these festival and large concert scenes within the jam band community in the early 2000s, and by the shift that I was witnessing in the drug use, from psychedelics to harder drugs, and a lot of people shooting on the scene, shooting drugs, and just being very curious about and moved by the poignant realities of what it is to be addicted to drugs. And so part of what drew me to San Francisco and to UCSF and, having experiences at the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic was a deep desire to understand the phenomenon of addiction and to allow myself to have my heart opened to it and respond from a place of humanity. And so being at UCSF at San Francisco General was hard because you're, as you say, you're in the thick of it. You're down in the mission and beautifully getting to serve with your heart, if you let it, blown wide open by the stories that you heard and the circumstances I've said publicly that I have this superpower of being moved to tears really easily, and I'm feeling it coming on right now. But I wrote about this in the early days of the unrest following George Floyd's murder. But what it is to witness. I had an experience in the emergency room of with a man of color who was a so-called frequent flyer, frequently admitted to the inpatient service, usually in heart failure, tipped off by his indulgence in crack cocaine, which in certain communities is very much like smoking marijuana recreationally, but we have all these judgments around it, and it's illegal. And so he was in custody, and it was actually the night that he would die. He was admitted to the ICU, and he did not survive. He was in his 60s, and he lived a hard life. But while he was in custody, in the emergency room, while I was admitting him, the police officers who were, there sitting with him while we were doing our medical work, he remained in custody, and he was in agony. And as we were working to control his symptoms and keep him safe and admit him, they were mocking him. And, for me, that was, I think it was hard emotionally to see the plight of humanity and the way in which humans are unkind to each other and the way in which society is unkind to people. And it was, heartening to know that there, being in medicine, I actually have a funny relationship with power, but I think that what I did recognize in that moment, that I actually could leverage my power over the police officers in the room and be able to speak powerfully to them and actually report them. What good it did, I do not know. But I think the hard thing is recognizing how little power actually we have to change some of the circumstances that come to bear on people's health, and see how hard we work on the downstream effects of the ravages of society. And the same is true in primary care, our chronic disease epidemic that we are grappling with and not really making much headway on, which will come to great financial impacts in coming years. So much of it is because we're operating within this completely perverse system that commodifies all sorts of things and doesn't seek to actually serve the well-being of humanity. It seeks to optimize profits. And the same is true within aspects of medicine, which is, I think, disheartening. But what was wonderful in that residency was to have a leader like Kevin Grumbach, who was fiercely, in rounds. Anytime someone would accidentally say the brand name of a medicine, he would tirelessly, what's the generic? Let us be free of the way in which the pharmaceutical industry has its grips on our practice and our what we're attending to in medicine.
And what you're saying is the reason why those kind of settings and that kind of practice is called the safety net is because you're basically catching all the fallout from the broader, sicker, challenging culture. And it's hard to, this is, there's many struggles on what you just mentioned in terms of a different healthcare system and all of the profit-oriented influences in there. Sometimes it seems that there's headway towards fixing some of that, and sometimes it seems not. But I'm wondering how you became interested in and continued to work within what is called integrative medicine, looking at less intensive, less pharmaceutical approaches and things like that. Did that come out of that experience too?
I would say I think the early days of that was being raised by a mother who was very health conscious and didn't really buy into the medicalization of human experiences. And I think she was really well before it was something that was popular in society at large. And certainly, she's a very conservative religious person in Wisconsin. So she's not out here in the Bay Area. But from early childhood, I was brought up with the idea that her version of it is that it's our own responsibility to take care of ourselves. And that taking good care of ourselves is it's just part of our responsibility. So that was in there. But I would say that that my interest in integrative medicine really was crystallized by my own coming face to face with illness, and I had a thyroid mass when I was a second year resident. And as you can probably appreciate, the second year of residency in this program was very intense. And thankfully I didn't have children, and I was able to bring a single-minded focus to residency. And I loved it. I loved the rigor of it. This was before work hour reform. So we were just like working like dogs in the inpatient in the hospital, and like just putting the needs of our patients and learning way above our own needs. But I was fine with it and, really engaged in it. But then I developed some health challenges, and I had a heart condition, and I had a thyroid mass. And I had a way of knowing that it wasn't cancer, but how do you really know? And I had endocrinologists telling me, you really need to have this out because it may well be cancer. This biopsy is inconclusive. And so for me, it was, just such a beautiful formative experience to come up against certain stylistic differences within counseling patients and managing patients, and just seeing how the unchecked egos and lack of emotional intelligence that was on full display by these full professors of medicine that, said things that you should just really never say to a 28-year-old woman. And so as I was grappling with it and also having my own openings around meditation and energy work and even contemplating that there is such a thing as meaning apropos illness, this was all really revelatory for me. And I began my own inquiry into different ways of doing healing work while very much wanting to magically or energetically or transpersonally make this mass go away, but ultimately came to an understanding of the difference between healing and curing and the beauty of surrender, and had a very moving, powerful experience with undergoing surgery and all that meant, even though it was quite a journey, a personal journey. And plus I got 2 weeks off of residency, which was a bonus. After that, really that, and plus I was socially, as I had moved out to the Bay Area, very much in the social scene with people who were ecologically attuned and activist oriented and permaculturally trained, and all doing yoga teachers and massage therapists. And so just I was in like a whole new social set, and just like, oh, this is actually just a culturally normative way of being, and it's actually the culture of medicine that needs to grow and evolve. And so then after I graduated from my residency, I had the great gift of an opportunity to be a Bravewell Fellow and do an integrative medicine fellowship at the University of Arizona, Andrew Weil's program.
Andrew Weil,
and specifically, like being a Bravewell Fellow, it was such an honor to be part of the Brave Old Collaborative, and part of that was this, sacred responsibility to take that and do what we can to evolve and change medicine in a way that honors the inherent capacity of human beings to heal, and partners with that, rather than dismissing or poo-pooing or insulting or verbally abusing those people who suspect that to be real, who come before you.
Mm-hmm. And so after that fellowship, you came back to this area?
So the fellowship was actually a distance learning, and that with three mostly. It was a 2-year experience. While I was doing that, I was doing work in the prison system. And as this was in the wake of the federal receivership that happened, that took the delivery of healthcare within the prison system out of the hands of the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, CDCR, and put it into the hands of the federal government because the care was unconstitutionally abysmal. And so part of that effort was UCSF in a contracted role with the CDCR going into the prison system and helping it increase the level of care and hiring new physicians and all of that. And so I had this beautiful opportunity while I was on site to be working with the women at an institution down in Southern California, and to be doing some of the mind-body work and the guided imagery and dance jams even within the prisons, within that prison. So having the opportunity and seeing the firsthand what it is to go into a place where medicine on so many, like healing on so many levels is needed, and to just be with people in their humanity and remembering that our presence first and foremost is medicine, and how we are with people, how we see them, and then the experiences that we hold space for is every bit as important as knowing what drug to give under what circumstance.
So out of did your broaden awareness of the ecological aspects from small plants to global climate change, all of that, did that come out of the kind of clinical integrative awareness too, or is that a separate thing, do you think?
I think it's born out of being deeply in love with the natural world and with animals and with plants and just the sacred beauty of it all. And having, as I mentioned, when I was going through this health challenge, I was grappling a lot with meaning and different choices. And for me, far more useful and instructive than, with all due respect, than receiving the counsel from, certain healthcare providers, was to go and be quiet in the natural world and be in relationship with a particular cypress that was in the Marin Headlands. I had a personal ritual around going and being with, and just getting into the practice of deep listening to the natural world and being amazed by the guidance that was that I received there. And so, and I think this is important. I think that coming from a place of loving relationship and interrelatedness and even interbeing within, as some call it, I think that is different than coming from a place of an intellectual awareness of the tremendous harm and degradation that's happening on an ecological level because of chemicals in the water and in the air. And I care every bit as much about that as many other things. But there's a different energetic resonance in coming from a place of love and attunement and relationship that motivates in a different way than awareness of toxicity, because there's a contracted charge, like it motivates and galvanizes, but I think a sustaining way for us to be moving in in fierce protection, it coming from a place of love and relationship is a really powerful place to stand from. So yeah, I think that it was long in coming, and really galvanized by being in a community of, like, in the Bay Area, where so many people were speaking the language of ecology and environmental activism and passionate love of and defense of, like, speaking of the planet as Gaia, or as it's like a living, breathing entity, like imagining into different ways that we can be in that sort of sacred relationship. And in fact, this is something that gives me a bit of a chill when I think about it. Part of in a good way, part of coming out and landing in this social community in the Bay Area was meeting so many people who were studying permaculture at the Regenerative Design Institute with Penny Livingston, and doing programs with James Stark. And as I was having my own opening experience and thinking about, like, the synthesis and of healing and being in relationship with the natural world, and the very real importance of practicing medicine and being in a praxis, really, of, like, making these ideas, practically speaking, real in practice. I had in the practice of medicine, I had a mantra that I would repeat as a touchstone in a North Star orientation, that I wanted to have a healing center that was grounded in the tenets of permaculture, and to be doing healing work in community in which we were thinking about medicine from the ground, from the earth up, like thinking about the relationship with the soil and the relationship with the earth as every bit as important as, getting exercise and eating the right foods and, doing deep healing of the allopathic sort, that having it be grounded in the tenets of ecology and permaculture was something that was such a captivating notion for me. And of course, as these things are, we have no way of knowing how we'll get from point A to point B, but through setting of intentions and deep listening, here I am actually in an actual permaculture garden, that stewarding the very same garden that Penny and James were teaching my friends that I was meeting when I first came out to the Bay Area, and aligning as much as I humanly can with, feeling very allied with the natural world. That actually, that is part of the medicine that we're working with here in the garden, and hope to be augmenting and animating and sharing with people in medicine. And it's been very moving to be in circles with resident physicians and with people in medicine, and for them to just be able to relax into the natural world and feel being held as we hold others. So, yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit more. But for those who don't know, the garden and the RGI, the Institute, is part of the Commonweal family of programs. And you, though, have taken this a little deeper and further with the Natura Institute. So tell us the kind of primary functions, the activities that you're doing, and the goals there on that.
Mm-hmm. So our mission here is to be cultivating the medicine of connection to ourselves, each other, and the earth. And so a lot can fall underneath that rubric, that mission. But first and foremost, for us to be in a healing relationship, a loving relationship with ourselves. So much of our vulnerability to consumerism, which of course is a scourge on this earth, and so much of the degenerative, extractive practices that we allow to happen on the body of our beloved planet, come from a place of lack. A sense that there's something more that we need internally, and that there's this void. Be it spiritual or interrelational, or just, relationship with self that allows us to continue to just be grasping and consuming. So, and of course, there are various societal and socioeconomic forces that conspire to make that void what it is. And additionally, like working with the relationship of being in connection with each other, that we human beings are social, and that the isolation, the rampant social isolation that we're experiencing collectively has a lot to do with how we are with each other, with the planet, and the chronic disease epidemic that we're experiencing. And then with the earth, like bringing ourselves back into a relationship therewith. And so we have several programs that fall under this mission, and one of them is the Art of Vitality program that I facilitate and have developed along with and facilitate with James Stark, which is really it's focused on bringing people together in a circle to be exploring our own inner work, what it is that makes us whole and healthy and vital, and from an integrative and an ecological perspective. And James brings in the spiritual psychology, like what's gone on in our lives, what's in our root system, so to speak, that needs to be composted for us to be fully expressed in our canopy, using the metaphor of the garden. And so we come together and attune what it is that we're doing with what's happening in the garden, and get into the metaphorical site of how we are actually manifestations of the natural world. And just like in traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, so many of these old intact whole systems of healing have long honored the fact that we are aspects of nature. We have different elemental forces that are moving through us, and that when we can bring ourselves into optimal balance, our body knows what to do and how to heal itself. So the Art of Vitality is one of the programs that it's such a joy to be in circles, and we've just completed our 4th circle. We'll be having a 5th circle. It's going to be postponed a bit because of COVID, because often it's rainy in the winter, and so we need to be able to come together in the yurt. And right now we're only coming together outside in Marin County and in the garden. Then we also have a permaculture program which is like, as we're reskilling ourselves in how collectively these are ancestral skills. Most of us, if you go back far enough in our own lineage, have family members who were in attending relationship with the earth. My great and grandparents who came from Scandinavia were farmers, as many people in Europe were, and then moved here and lost that connection. And so how do we reskill ourselves in knowing how to grow food and vegetables and plant medicine, as well as just reading a landscape and having really practical skills. We're developing, and we have this permaculture program. The 4 Seasons program has been it's a program that Penny had been teaching here with a woman named Lydia Nielsen and Spencer Nielsen, no relation. And Spencer and Lydia are continuing to teach this here. And we've also layered in a kids permaculture program so that families can be doing this together and just having experiences on the land. We also have these community medicine circles, which are such a joy, and they are in collaboration with the community health center that I work with, Coastal Health Alliance, and that had been taking place in the yurt, but now particularly in the COVID, well, definitely precipitated by the COVID time, because I was highly ambivalent about doing Zoom calls and, don't really like being on a screen, truth be told, but, saw the utility in moving it into the computer world. And so in the spring, we did a community medicine series, basically, again, like bringing people together, sharing with them about how their body works. I'm so fascinated by anatomy and physiology, and and the physiology of plant medicine, and basically how can we support our immune system? How can we be optimizing our health and well-being? And just as an aside, that's one of the challenges for me in witnessing this COVID pandemic, in addition to the disinformation and the misinformation and the woeful lack of leadership on so many different levels. There's so much that we can do to support our health and well-being and optimize our immune system that has gotten like zero attention, basically, in the media. And in fact, when people try to bring attention to it, then they're, we have to be really careful how we language it. And of course, we don't want to be irresponsible, but it is true that there are many studies out there that show that there are things that we can be doing, practices like getting a good night's sleep, being in connecting relationship, minding our stress, optimizing our fruits and vegetable content, and particular other plants that have all sorts of plant anthocyanidins and phytochemicals and fascinating compounds that can dampen inflammation and optimize our immune system. That we should be talking about this right now. And we are. And so those are the community medicine circles that we do. And we're about to launch our next go round August 12th. And I think Kira will put up the link to that page on the website if people are interested in logging in. It's free by donation. So that, and James Stark and his role with Commonweal and the Resilience Project, and we're working on an upcoming offering that will be probably first in the digital realm, again, because of COVID, but looking at resilience from both the inner landscape, the outer landscape, and some of the practical permacultural, ecological ways of being. So lots of different things. And then we also have circles for people who are in medicine, retreats for physicians, retreats for residents. And then having other people come into the garden. Right now, actually tomorrow, there's a beautiful program called Project Avery. It's very movingly for me personally, as I've worked in the prison system with women who have children from whom they were separated, women who were pregnant while they were incarcerated, who had to give their children into the care of others. Project Avery is a program for kids of incarcerated people. And they have been in the garden this summer, and tomorrow they'll be here in the garden, these kids. And there's an award-winning podcast called Ear Hustle, who will be here and listening to the stories of kids of incarcerated people. And so really being intentional about how we create space here for people to be in the embrace of the natural world, so that they can be, doing their own healing work on whatever that looks like, be it just like being a kid, playing, climbing trees, actually not climbing trees. It's a little insurance, legalistic. We're not climbing trees. But, just that, what it is to just be in relationship with the natural world and what comes therefrom. We also have a series of retreats that we've been doing with the Latina community, Latinx women who've been in restorative retreats, which is, it's really moving for me to have people come to the garden, if like these kids of the incarcerated who often come from urban environments, people who are not nature saturated, the way so many of us blessedly out here in West Marin, we are nature saturated. We're so blessed and privileged, therefore. And similarly, to create retreat experiences for people who are working really hard and don't always have the capacity to take time away and be in connection with each other because they're usually working really hard. And then we do herbal medicine programs, and so there's just a lot of different things that are working principally at this intersection of connection with ourselves, each other, and the natural world.
It sounds like you're a great believer in the concept or even the diagnosis of nature deficit disorder.
Indeed. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I just wrote this article. I had this great opportunity to write an article for the Ecopsychology Journal and to go way into the evidence on how the natural world heals us. And we are pretty fairly disconnected from the natural world, and there's an ongoing loss of the natural world and intact ecosystems and wildlands. Much needs to be done here, and I would argue that this is an essential public health challenge for us to be leaning into. That when what we know about the chronic disease epidemic and inflammation and how our immune system is completely inflamed in an exaggerated way by all these anthropogenic drivers of chronic disease that we've been talking about, things that our clever species have wrought and brought upon ourselves, that when we get out into the natural world and our sympathetic nervous system is quieted, and the fight or flight system and the parasympathetic nervous system is supported. We are meditated basically by the natural world. Plus, we're breathing in all these anti-cancer chemicals and anti-inflammatory chemicals. And then when you put your hands in the soil and you have like an inoculation of the microbes that live there, and our microbiome is supported, like so many, basically anything that we could look to that is a anthropogenic driver of chronic disease, be it our cortisol levels and our blood sugar levels and our high blood pressure, all of these things that feed into diabetes and hypertension and cardiovascular disease and cancer and dementia. Like we have this burgeoning huge challenge ahead of us with high rates of obesity and all of the other diseases that I just mentioned, that when you look at what it is to be in relationship with the natural world, and I mean, even just like being able to look out the window and see a tree, it gives you benefit. But that's just like scratching the surface, of course. There's like each of those anthropogenic drivers is met and dampened specifically through an aspect of the natural world, which I think, I have I think we want to move beyond the transactional relationship with the natural world, which we could get into quite easily, like, oh, what can that tree do for me? Or what are the ecosystem services, as some people describe it, which, I think is motivating for some people to put it into that frame. But ultimately, a better frame is like, how can we be in a relationship with the beloved that's restorative and beautifully healing springs therefrom?
On the individual resilience, the immunity level, we had a talk with Dr. Cynthia Lee some time ago that is in the on the website that people can watch, with a lot of tips about thriving now in that respect. We also had a talk with Marvin Mutch, who was a resident convict in San Quentin for many years and was freed when it was found out that he was there not justifiably. And his programs in terms of surviving and helping families as well. So these are all part of the big picture here. I'm wondering a bit about yourself. So one of the things in medicine that has really come up with respect to this pandemic too is what is being called wellness. Physician and clinician nurse survival in a very stressful environment, which has always been that way, but is even worse now. You mentioned the concept of having enough time with individual patients to really delve into these important aspects and make a difference, and that people really feel pressured in most settings of practice that have enough time. They take on the broader aspects of pathology and how do you deal with that and stress. So for yourself and just in terms of what you see with colleagues as well, and if you have thoughts on how we can move that forward, where important essential workers, as they were now called, such as yourself, can continue to do this work without being burnt out, and is the most common term. What do you see?
Well, I I care very much about this, and I also care very much about the power of having restorative experiences. I think that the temptation is that we see within the medical world is to talk a lot about physician wellness and offer wellness retreats as though burnout is some sort of individual failure to do enough yoga or meditate enough or eat healthily, which of course is ridiculous. That that often is the case, that we aren't prioritizing self-care, but self-care alone will not address the abject failure of a system that is not set up to allow for that which is essential in the essential work of healing. And if we're really going to honor the essential work of healing and not be essential in a commodified sort of a way, then we have to look at structural changes within medicine. And I think language is such a powerful tool to describe what it is that we are working with. And so I think burnout, while that has been the prevailing term, and we know that burnout is the rates are extremely high. I think it's around 40% in medicine in general. Within primary care, the last number that I've seen was 53%. Some people put it in the 70s. It's being described as its own public health failure. So we are public health epidemic, and so we do have to meaningfully look at this. I think that I love this new term that people have been using for the past year or two to really put a finer point on what it is that we're talking about here. And I think that the idea of moral injury does get us closer to describing what's going on here. That our burnout is that it's not just because we're being asked to do more with less time. It's actually harmful for us to be asked to do that which is not possible, which is when I think about what it is like that I'm often asked to do in a 15-minute visit with people who have great health challenges that will take some serious thought. And here I am, a highly trained individual who loves intellectual rigor, and I'm a very curious person. I love to problem solve. And I that's one of the great joys in medicine, is to test hypotheses and to run tests and to deeply listen to the story and then figure something out. But that takes so much longer than 15 minutes. And so when we know that we have somebody's life and well-being entrusted to our care, and we have tools and training, we've dedicated, in many cases, decades of our lives to this path of service, but because of the constraints that are there because of insurance companies and healthcare and hospital systems that ask us, they need to meet their bottom line, and the only way they've been able to figure it out so far is ask us to see more and more and more people, that we just simply can't do our job. And so we know that things are going to fall through the cracks. And we have this way of holding it that's on us. It's our responsibility when we're asked to be doing the impossible. So the way that I have approached it personally, which I have, I limit the number of days a week that I am actually doing clinical medicine. I see between 20 and 24 people on a typical day now. Now it's over the phone or video, and some with a handful of people who are coming in. So I can see more people because there's efficiencies in the phone calls, but I can do that for 2 days, and then I'll stay and do the administrative slog, and I'm often there until 10 or 11 o'clock at night. I've got a solid constitution. I can do work marathons 2 days a week, but beyond that, I'm far more. Not far more, I would say. I actually love clinical medicine. I love it. But I also love myself, and I love my children, and I love animating other opportunities. And so I'm also as a family and community medicine physician, part of my administrative project, which here is the beauty of clinicians, physicians being in a good relationship with administrators. Like we had our executive director at Coastal Health Alliance, Steve Siegel, saw my gifts and aptitudes and strong desire to be working on a more of a community level. And so it gave me permission to have some of my administrative time go toward writing newspaper articles and being on the radio and developing and implementing these community medicine circles, both in the garden, but also online. And so I think that and this is when I'm in circles with residents, this is what actually gives people hope. Not that, oh, we had a great yoga session in the garden, but that here's someone who is animating a possibility of finding. Excuse the telephone call. That there are ways to work within our profession that allows us creativity and agency, and we can get out of the box. There are paths toward getting out of the box. And for me, having this great gift of an opportunity to be bringing people together and doing healing work in groups in a natural setting, I think that there's a lot about this that warrants viewing it as a model that could be replicated elsewhere. That being, we have this existing network of community health centers. We have existing networks of parks and natural spaces, and the more we can see the relationship between being in community and seeing the natural world as part of our community and leveraging community and connection and being held by the natural world. And see that actually as an important part of the work that we do as healers, I think the better for us all. We have natural leadership capacities. People trust us because we have earned that trust because we're service oriented, we're highly educated. We see it now, and like who's a trustworthy leader right now at the federal level? It's not our president. It's the doctor. And so I think that as we peer into the future and think about how we're grappling with in our profession, meaning and resilience and just navigating this incredible role that we need to advocate for ourselves and with our administrators within our community and within our own ability to vision a different possibility, that the more we can step into positions of leadership and roles that allow us to advocate for the change that we know needs to happen, that we can speak to with great personal experience, the better we will be, actually, because it's that being in that paralyzed place of disempowered lack of agency that is the injurious aspect of the practice, I think.
Very well said. I'm wondering about the COVID pandemic in general. We're in this time of crisis now, and what your thoughts are in adding this into the big mix of issues that we've already mentioned here. It's both a shocking development and no surprise to those of us who have followed this along that this would happen, that we would have an infectious disease pandemic that would disrupt our whole culture and economy and healthcare system as well. How are you holding this in the? I don't expect that you're seeing a lot of it clinically at this point, but in the picture, it impacts all of these things that we're talking about. And how do you feel about it?
I'm moved by what people are experiencing and how our colleagues that are truly in the front lines are risking their life and sacrificing their ability to be with their family as they're perpetually in quarantine so that they can be of service. I'm grateful that thus far we've we're there, we're doing the work, we're doing the testing. We have some cases, but we're not inundated right now. So there's that. And I know that the silver linings that I'm experiencing are a manifestation of my own privilege, that I have the privilege to appreciate the fact that my very, very busy, overscheduled existence has slowed down a bit, while I still have the great privilege of drawing a paycheck, that I am an essential worker. So I'm not pushed to any survival edge right now. And I'm deeply grateful for that. I think for me, I was asked in a radio interview a couple of days ago about this question. Someone put up a sign in Bolinas about, what are the lessons? Like, how can this pandemic be a teacher for us? And of course, we want to be deeply honoring the pain and the suffering, and not be trite or glib. But I do think that it is a powerful reminder to us all that there are no guarantees that we will live into the next week or month. And that's always been so. But this brings it up into sharp relief. Like, yeah, death is real. Like, let us live as though this is this could possibly be the last day that I'm alive. And like, how does that inform how I am with my children, with my other beloveds, and with my practice, and what am I choosing to do with my time? How important is it for me to fritter away money on things that I could buy, or not? So being in the present moment with appreciation that there are no guarantees, and that, just grappling with and preparing for death. And part of our community medicine circles, one of the early ones, was about filling out advanced medical directives. I'm just going to put a little plug, fill out your advanced medical directives. It's really important. This is a way you can have agency about the way, the kind of care that you get, which is important. I also think that there are beautiful lessons in non-attachment, and that the wonderful plans that we may have had may not come to pass, and that's okay. So I think for me, but thinking medically, I appreciate that we are being shook a little bit, that that we need something to shake us out of this trance that we've all been moving through. And unfortunately, often it is a crisis that moves us into stepping into the opportunity. And that's something that I'm grateful for, that and this will undoubtedly not be the last crisis that we navigate together, nor the most serious. And so for us, I'm grateful for the opportunity to go through this practice of, okay, how do we operate on an intensely local level? What does it look like for people to respond to their neighbors? What does it look like for a physician in a small community to exercise leadership and be, putting out information in a way that holds space for the fear and provides some degree of comfort, because there is actual information that we know, and we don't have to listen to the loudest mouth. We can actually, be cultivating our own, way of being with each other that is skilled and resilient. And, this will certainly be true as we navigate ecological collapse, that, the more we have intensely local, regional islands of sanity with people who have skills and know how to connect with each other and be in authentic healing interrelatedness, the better. And so I welcome adversity as a way for us to be sharpening the skill set that we really all need to be cultivating right now.
Right. Necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Indeed.
This is a little more personal. You don't have to answer. You have young children. Having children has been called the greatest leap of faith we can make in terms of looking at the future. So I'm just wondering how being a parent motivates and animates your work and your worldview.
Well, thanks for asking that question. And anything that cracks your heart wide open and makes you vulnerable in the face of great love is it's so beautiful to be able to be moved by love and protecting those beings that you love. And for me, they're such teachers of mine in how to be in like the present moment with curiosity and with, they're such lovers of the natural world, of course. And so, I mean, that's just, it's inherent in the fabric of childhood if circumstances support it, which they're very blessed to have circumstances support it. For me, it also it continues to sharpen my resolve to do as much as I can to speak for the earth and to be watching my own practices of consumption and the choices that I make, because they're watching really closely. They're, very attuned to what it is to love the earth and love the beings on it. They're very, very oriented toward a tender, loving relationship with all of the beings, from the little bugs to the birds and the foxes and that live here with us. And so, I don't go very often to a place of fear around what it will be like for them when they're 60 or 70 years old, because none of us can predict that. And I prefer to spend as much time and focus as I can on creating beauty and opportunity and vision within my sphere of influence, which is my home in this garden in West Marin, and then wherever else I can, because it could be that the crises that we're facing will open the door for the most beautiful reality that we could imagine. It could be that by the time they're 60 or 70, that we human beings will have fallen back in love with the natural world and know that we can let all of it go and bring our focus to growing food and medicine and being in beautiful, harmonious, simplified relationship because we have to. It could be that, and may it be so. And so, I think my relationship with my children is this a beautiful love relationship with two amazing human beings, and as an invitation to ever deepening animation of vision.
So the desert island question, you have to go off to a desert island. You can bring your family, but you can only take 3 books with you.
Oh.
What would they be? Top of your head. Don't think too hard because it's an impossible question, right? But
mm-hmm.
as an introvert, you read a lot. So yeah, that's what we do.
It's true. I think for me, those thinking that I'd be there for a while and not going to want to read a novel over and over again. I love poetry for opening us into the ineffable. And I would imagine on a desert island, I would be thinking and more than thinking, being in the experience of mystery and opening to different spiritual realities. And for me, like I love Rumi and the Sufist way, and also the way in which the relationship between beloved friends opens the door into relationship with the divine. So I think that I'd bring The Essential Rumi by Coleman Barks. And I think it's such a beautiful question.
It's okay. I couldn't answer it.
They would be books of poetry and books that journals and books that have to do with the natural world. If there were a bird book or a book about the plants that were of that place, I would choose that, I think, because I'm always wanting to know and love my natural neighbors better. But I don't think that I would choose a book on philosophy or something that would put me too much into my head, because I take in so much through my senses that I would want something that would be feeding me on that level.
You mentioned when we were talking before that you had a poem you wanted, since you mentioned poetry, that you had a poem you wanted to read for us here.
Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking, I love it when, and this happens so often in Commonweal conversations, that poetry is woven in, and I also I love blessings and convocations and the ceremonial way of being with each other. And so I was thinking, I mean, there's so many different beautiful, beautiful poems out there. But as I was thinking about, first of all, the fact that we have a beloved human being right now, dear to so many of us, that is undergoing surgery, at this moment. And I actually have a little candle here lit for him. And just thinking, knowing that our conversation was going to be an exploration of what it is to be in medicine and in healing, and also just having my heart and mind so fully with a person whose life is quite literally in the hands of others, and knowing what it is to be working with that deep experience. I chose a book. It's a blessing. John O'Donohue has written many beautiful books, but this is from To Bless the Space Between Us, which is a book of blessings. And it's a book, it's a blessing. This one is for a nurse. And there's something about nursing and being a nurse that so many of us who are physicians have that same sort of tending orientation and caring for people and helping people navigate. But there's something about nursing, like really being at the bedside for people, and that we can all cultivate aspects of this when we're caring for people. And so I thought that would be, as we're thinking about tending each other and tending the earth and navigating adverse experiences, and how we in medicine do that, how nurses do that, but how also we each carry that possibility within ourselves. I thought that this would be a good one to read. So here it is. For a nurse. Your mind knows the world of illness, the fright that invades a person, arriving in, out of the world, distraught and grieved by illness. How it can strip a life of its joy, dim the light of the heart, put shock in the eyes. You see worlds breaking at the onset of illness. Families at bedsides distraught that their mother's name has come up in the secret lottery of misfortune that had always chosen someone else. You watch their helpless love that would exchange places with her. The veil of skin opened, the search through the body's night to remove tissue war-torn with cancer. Young lives that should be out in the sun, enjoying life with wild hearts, come in here lamed by accident, and the lucky ones who leave, already old and in captive posture. The elderly who should be prepared, but are frightened and unsure. You understand no one can learn beforehand an elegant or easy way to die. In this fragile frontier place, your kindness becomes a light that consoles the brokenhearted, awakens within desperate storms, that oasis of serenity that calls the spirit to rise from beneath the weight of pain, to create a new space in the person's mind where they gain distance from their suffering and begin to see the invitation to integrate and transform it. May you embark the beauty in what you do and how you stand like a secret angel between the bleak despair of illness and the unquenchable light of spirit, that can turn the darkest destiny towards dawn. May you never doubt the gifts you bring. Rather, learn from these frontiers wisdom for your own heart. May you come to inherit the blessings of your kindness and never be without care and love when winter enters your own life.
Beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I would love just to, because, you know, here comes this amazing superpower of mine to experience emotion readily. I was wondering if maybe we could just take a moment with our breath and with all that we've talked about, all that people in medicine hold, all that, you know, in this moment, like being with the breath and with our open hearts, just sending up prayers for all of those people who in this moment and in all moments hold precious life of precious human beings in their hands. And send up a prayer for those people who, having surgery or recovering from illness or being in the ICU, the ravages of COVID and other illnesses, whose lives are in the hands of others. Just breathing love and appreciation and prayers for that sacred work and that sacred receiving of love and care. Thank you. And let's beam like a special ray of love and prayer. Just, what did you say, 12 blocks from your house, Steve? Yeah. And may we hold this in our hearts as we navigate. You know, it's we as I mentioned in the manifesto, and as we all, I think maybe some of us track more or less than others, you know, we may well face extinction. You know, in my lifetime or my children's lifetime, we don't know. Just like it could be the most beautiful reality, it could be that it's like humanity's reality is coming to a close. We don't know. But in that liminal place of not knowing and grappling with death and grappling with adversity, you know, there is a tremendous invitation to be our most beautiful, loving, caring selves in the actual moment in which all life happens, and, you know, experience the healing that comes from that relationship with the now.
Anna, I really want to thank you for this. You know, we set this up kind of in a sudden way, and but I was very confident that you could certainly fill this time with so many wonderful thoughts and so much informed discussion. So very beautiful. Thank you very much for doing this. I have one more question. It's the hardest one for you, and it only because of what you said. What's your favorite Grateful Dead song?
Oh, gosh, thanks for asking that question. Oh, so many. There's so many. Eyes of the World. And I also have a special affinity for the lyric in which family medicine doctors are called out it's actually a cover, but you know, the song that, you know, what is needed is love. You know, that I asked my family doctor just what I had, and what she said, what you really need is true love. You know, like that for me is a lyric that that always is personally moving. But for the opening into that interbeing that I revel in and honor, and in all of its glorious mystery, and that which the mystics have experienced, it's Eyes of the World. How about you?
Just for those who don't know, we have some shared history in this in terms of the hate clinic. And actually, I had our regular once a week, I have what we call park rounds with Dr. Dave Smith, the founder of the hate clinic, and others. It's addiction med stuff. So we call it drugs, docs, and dogs rounds. And somehow the Grateful Dead always comes in there because they were part of that whole milieu and so forth. But for me, it's probably Ripple. I love the whole message within that song, and it's beautifully done by many. There's Playing for Change is the group, the international group that or network that does these songs, and they did a very beautiful version of that too. So again, thank you very much. There will be a recording of this that will be posted. And next week, next Friday, I just set this up yesterday, we should have Dr. Donald Abrams, who's a dear old friend and colleague and a real pioneer in many areas, both HIV care. He was at San Francisco General as well, medical cannabis, the right to die, lots more, and also a very fun and funny guy. And he's just retired from almost 40 years of practice. And so we're just going to have a chat about everything he's done and what he's thinking about as well. So we'll follow up on that. So
it is to him that I owe a deep debt of gratitude for bestowing upon me the Bravewell Fellowship that allowed me to do the Integrative Medicine Fellowship.
Yes, a pioneer in that way too. He's been at the Osher Center for Integrative Medicine for quite some time as well. So we'll follow up nicely on this talk as well. So there are a lot of comments and questions mostly answered on the chat here as well. We welcome donations of whatever you can just to keep these programs going because it's free and by donation. And with that, Anna O'Malley, thank you very much. And we'll see you around, I hope.
Thank you, Steve. I hope so too.